I was a teenager in the 1970s, and I remember sometimes being allowed to watch the music show Countdown on TV, and then listening to all those bands on the radio that were around at the time. If you're from my generation, you'll remember them. Sherbet, Skyhooks, ABBA, the Bay City Rollers. I know, that really dates me. But one of the bands from that era was a less known glam rock band called Hush. And they had a hit song in the 70s called Nothing Stays the Same Forever. Now, I'm not going to try and sing it because you'll probably unsubscribe, but I guess that the title was pretty prophetic because those bands have come and gone, and probably the members are seniors now or have passed away, and they've handed over the reins to a new generation of young, fit bodies who can jump around on the stage for hours on end. And that's life. We age. It's inevitable. And once we reach a certain age, as each year passes by, our bodies deteriorate that a little bit more. Often it's so gradual that we don't necessarily recognise the change, or we choose not to acknowledge it or any increased need for support. But as we get into our later senior years, ignoring those signs is not always the wisest path. Sometimes ignoring the signs results in an older person ending up at increased risk of illness, more injuries, being prematurely admitted to residential care, or worse, dying too young. Now, if you're a support worker or care worker, or perhaps even a family carer, you might need to be the one who identifies and names that change or deterioration in the person that you support. That's today's topic: recognising and responding to signs of deterioration. Hi, I'm Carrie from Culturally Directed Care Solutions, where we give you the knowledge and tools to provide quality care with confidence. If aged care is your thing, then why not consider subscribing? That way you'll never miss out on catching our latest video. Now, one of the questions being asked of approved providers by quality assessors or auditors when they're reviewing the standard of care and the services that are being delivered is, how can you ensure that staff can recognise the signs and symptoms of deterioration in a consumer's mental health, their cognitive or physical condition, their functions or capacity, and do they know how to respond appropriately? So, to be able to answer that with confidence, what should you be looking for when it comes to the signs and symptoms of deterioration, and what should you be doing if you notice them? Well, here are some of the things that I think you should be keeping an eye out for. Changes in personality. Perhaps you've noticed a change in someone's personality. They're showing less interest in something that they used to be passionate about. Perhaps they've become more withdrawn, or maybe they're showing really erratic mood swings. They're laughing one minute and crying the next, or they're exhibiting what appears to be unprovoked outbursts of anger. Now, the brain controls personality and mood, so any damage from illnesses like dementia or other injuries like strokes can result in changes to the person's personality. So that's definitely a deterioration of the brain, their mental health, and it should be noted and addressed. What about forgetfulness? Maybe you're visiting the person to provide domestic assistance and you start to notice bills are piling up on the sideboard. Newspapers are unopened, and you notice there appear to be multiples of the same items in the pantry or the bathroom cabinet. And you know that the person didn't have any hoarding tendencies before. But when you mention it to them, perhaps they just laugh it off and they say, oh, someone must be coming into the home and they're putting the extra things there. Something's not right there. Or perhaps you suspect the person has been wearing the same clothes from one week to the next and they just look like they're unwashed, but the person says to you, yeah, no, look, I've been washing my clothes, I've been taking showers, and yeah, I've paid all my bills on time. Now, while we all have times when we forget where we've put the car keys or we misplace our mobile phone, We might even forget to pay the odd bill on time, but we're aware of the oversight. And when someone is in denial or they don't recognise what's happening, if it's starting to impact on the health and well-being of the person, that's an indicator that something is not right and it needs to be investigated. So make sure this gets reported to the person's care or case manager and your supervisor. And if you're a family carer, have a discussion with the person's GP. But what about if the person's not displaying signs of forgetfulness, but you're still finding that their home is becoming more untidy, dishes are being left unwashed, there's out-of-date food in the fridge, the letterbox is full, and the garden is becoming a bit of a jungle? These environmental indicators can be a sign that the person is experiencing either physical difficulty in completing tasks, or perhaps they've just become demotivated. Whatever the reason, the thing is to recognise and respond to the change by recording your observations and reporting to your supervisor so that they can investigate it further. Now, as I mentioned, sometimes a messy home or a change in habits can be a result of someone experiencing physical difficulties. And about 50% of older adults report experiencing regular pain in their hip and knee joints, and it's usually a result of osteoarthritis. But being in constant pain often means that the person doesn't want or can't move around very much, which in turn means that their overall health deteriorates. So if you see the person sitting down more, or maybe having difficulty getting up from their chair, or perhaps they're being slower in answering the door, or they're choosing to go out into the community less, then take note, because this can also mean that the person has deteriorated physically and has potentially become a higher falls risk. Now, there are all sorts of physical changes that you should be keeping an eye out for, not just the person appearing to be in pain. A loss of appetite often means the person loses weight, but weight loss can also be the result of a person having problems with their mouth and teeth, or having swallowing difficulty. Sometimes it's also simply that the person tires more easily and finds eating exhausts them. So loss of weight is a really good indicator that something needs to be investigated and addressed. And there are other, perhaps more subtle things to keep in mind. If you visit and find the TV or the radio is turned up loud, the person might be having difficulty with their hearing. Or perhaps you notice that the person's car has a number of scratches and dents that weren't there before. Are they experiencing a loss in their vision? Is there a change in their depth perception? Or are they experiencing physical changes that mean they can't move their neck and shoulders easily, so they're not seeing hazards when they're in a car park, and they are then at increased risk of being involved in an accident? Also keep an eye out for bruising, cuts, burns or something like that, because if a person's having dizzy spells or increasing frailty, they may end up with a number of unexplained injuries because of falls, and they're not necessarily disclosing this to anyone. Also, if the person appears to be having more frequent or serious illnesses, that can also indicate physical deterioration, because we know that the immune system weakens as we get older, and often our skin integrity as well. So this means personal care staff, you need to be looking out for any unexplained skin tears or bruising when you're helping a client with showering or other personal care tasks. Attention to the person's overall physical appearance should also be something that every care staff member takes note of, whether the person lives at home or in a residential care facility. Also, due to cognitive deterioration, you'll sometimes find older people making what seems to be irrational decisions. Now, my Nana, she lived until her late 80s, but in her last year, she started to make some risky choices. The decision for her to move into a nursing home was made by my aunts after they found her stoking her wood-fired cooker with a 4-foot long log of wood. and she was just feeding that log into the firebox as it burnt down. Now, she probably felt that was a practical solution because she couldn't chop the wood up anymore, but it was a dangerous action, especially in a timber home, and it was just too risky. She'd obviously lost the capacity to recognize that. So keep an eye and an ear out for behaviours that appear irrational, because it could be a sign that the person needs a dementia assessment or perhaps additional physical supports. Now, while some of these changes can present as minor, if you've got any concerns about a person, even if it's just that you know something's changed, but you're not really sure what it is, note it down anyway. Report it to your care manager or your supervisor so that they can speak to the person or their carer. Well-written observations are really essential to help pinpoint a problem and help care planners to work with the person and their carer to address any issues in a timely manner. So make sure you write up your progress notes regularly. And if you're not sure about how to write good progress notes and you're looking to learn more about how to write them to industry standard, we have a short online course that will help you to upskill in this area. You'll find a link to the course in the description below. So to summarize, often the deterioration or change is something minor, something that can be addressed easily and quickly, but sometimes it's more. And if you're able to identify this change or deterioration in the early stages, be it major or minor, if appropriate and timely action is then taken to address the issue, the impact on the long-term overall health and well-being of that person can be improved. Thanks for joining me here today. I'll see you in another video real soon.